Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flash Forward, the show where I talk about every single issue of The Flash. It's been a long time since we've covered some Flash on this channel. There's been some difficulties with phone repairs, but now we can finally continue reading Jeff Johns' run on The Flash. This week, we are going to be finishing his run and reading the following issues that came after his run that were written by other writers leading up to Infinite Crisis. That's where we're going to be ending this week's episode, is right where Countdown to Infinite Crisis starts. And so next week, we will be covering Countdown to Infinite Crisis. So exciting things are going to happen. And obviously, Jeff Johns wants to end his run on a bang. So the main story that will be covered today in this episode is Rogue War, the massive event that Jeff Johns has pretty much been building up to this entire time. This is what he's been building up to, and we're finally getting to this climax. Alongside Jeff Johns, we've got Howard Porter returning as the artist for The Flash. He's been drawing The Flash alongside Jeff Johns for a little while now. So we're going to be starting with issue 217, which acts as a bit of an aftermath to Identity Crisis, because if you haven't watched the Identity Crisis episode, or you don't know what happened in Identity Crisis, Captain Boomerang, aka Digger Harkness, was killed, and his son, Owen Mercer, became the new Captain Boomerang. And so in this issue, the Rogues gather together in order to hold a funeral for Captain Boomerang. So it's one of those moments where we get to see some solidarity between the Rogues. It's definitely the best moments that the Rogues have, is when they're acting like a family. You know, they might be bad guys, but they're not bad guys. They actually care about one another. At the end of the previous issue, though, we actually had a big reveal, which was Linda Park returning after her year-long disappearance, or a month. I think it was a month that she was gone for. And she's back, and she's over everything that happened. She recently went through a miscarriage, and she's fine now. She went away for a month, spent some time away by herself, and now she's all good. Does it sound ridiculous? Yeah, of course. It sounds incredibly ridiculous. Why would somebody who's suffered a miscarriage go away for a month and suddenly get over it? That doesn't make any sense. It's not realistic. And it's actually kind of frustrating reading this and seeing that, Linda Park is basically just all good. She's like, yeah, I'm fine. They don't even mention the miscarriage in this. All she mentions is that she's okay with the secret identity now. She doesn't even mention that she's, okay with the fact that she lost 2 kids. This has come right after Wally West has gotten his secret identity back, so now he's back to being the Flash. And because he's the Flash and his identity is secret now, Linda Park gets to be a reporter again. So I guess there's some silver linings from the terrible decisions that Jeff Johns has made. He realized that he fucked up after he started with making Linda Park a nurse, so he's just completely dropped that. And made her a reporter again. So on the one side, it's like, yay, I'm glad she's a reporter again. On the other side, why were we wasting so much freaking time with the whole nurse thing when you were just going to drop it anyway, Jeff? What were you doing? But anyway, we get into issue 217, which begins with Linda Park questioning the Flash, and she's like, so what are you going to do, Flash? And he grabs her and he pulls her away, zooms into a nearby building, and makes out with her. Because he's just happy to see Linda again. And this is when they have their massive conversation about the fact that Linda was gone for a month and that she's okay now. She's okay with his secret identity. She's okay with everything. She's happy that she gets to be a reporter again because she no longer needs to worry about people judging her for being the wife of the Flash, even though nobody was doing that. And, it was never a problem, but, Jeff Johns made it a problem so that his story would work, but whatever. No, Wally and Linda are all good. They're all happy. Wally himself also doesn't mention the miscarriage. Like, you just think that would be a thing that would linger on their relationship, and you would think, like, oh, maybe Jeff brings it up again. No, he doesn't. They don't mention it again. Eventually the kids would come back in the future, but that's for another episode. That's for another story. So Wally and Linda decide to celebrate coming back together by heading off to France, which is the place that they often go to for dates and stuff, because when you're dating a speedster, you can go wherever the heck you want. Mark Marden, aka the weather wizard, is depressed on top of a bridge. It almost looks like he's considering committing suicide. That's at least what I gather from this panel. He's standing on the end of the bridge, looks like he's about to jump, and then Mirror Master unknowingly saves his life by telling him that the funeral for Captain Boomerang is ready, and that Mirror Master is his only way of getting there. So Mark is like, alright, let's go. So they head off to a nearby graveyard. You're probably thinking, how do supervillains hold a funeral for a fellow supervillain without any superheroes knowing? Like, wouldn't the superheroes show up and stop it? Well, they actually explain that in this. So the funeral is taking place in a little pocket dimension created by the Folded Man, and they're using Gorilla City technology to cloak themselves thanks to Gorilla Grodd. And there's actually a moment where Mark is like, wow, Gorilla Grodd, I never knew he was a stand-up guy. And Mirror Master is like, he isn't. Captain Cold just promised him that he'd get to, like, eat Flash's heart once D-Day happens, because the Rogues are planning something. They're planning a massive attack on Keystone City, and their goal is to take care of the Flash once and for all. And by take care, I mean kill, obviously. They're not gonna, like, babysit him or something. So yeah, they hold the funeral for Captain Boomerang. Captain Cold talks about how, Captain Boomerang was just a criminal who didn't want to kill anyone. He just wanted to be noticed. And he also just wanted to be a father. And Owen gets really annoyed by this funeral. And Captain Cold just keeps going. He's like, death isn't something new to the Rogues. And I know we don't usually work together, but you've all heard Mirror Master's story about Dr. Light. I'm not into... And a lot of the Rogues are just, like, kind of split on, like, whether or not they even believe Dr. Light's story. And Cole just turns to some of the new Rogues, and they're like, you've shown us your trust by coming here and standing in solidarity with us, and we just want you to know that as the Rogues, we want to stand in solidarity with you. So we're giving you a chance to be one of us. So you got to treat us with respect, and we'll treat you with respect. We don't betray each other. We help one another. You're not in on the Union, but, like, you're breaking into the group. And if you keep doing good, like, we'll let you in with the big leagues. There's a lot of benefits being with the Rogues. You get a lot of protection. This is when Jeff introduces a new version of the Rainbow Raider, or Rainbow Raiders, as they are known as now. Obviously, Rainbow Raider was killed by Blacksmith, a Jeff Johns Flash villain in a previous arc, and so he is now being replaced by the Rainbow Raiders, who are a group of people, each represented by a different color. So there's, like, red, indigo, violet, etc. They don't really matter, and there's actually a meta joke in this where they're complaining about not mattering, like nobody cares about them. I think they showed up in a different comic or something. I don't care. Either way, Owen just gets really mad. He, like, throws a boomerang. He's like, idiots! And he showcases his super speed, throws his boomerang, breaks apart the casket. Turns out there's nothing in it, because he's like, why are we even holding this funeral? We don't even have the body. The FBI does. We need to just get out there and just start causing mayhem. Like, I'm ready. I'm ready to start causing mayhem, because I don't want to sit around anymore. I just want to get my revenge on the Flash, and have some fun. And, everyone just kind of, like, tries to calm him down, including Cold. And the other Rogues are like, he's not one of us, because he's a speedster. Like, why is he here? And Cold is like, because he has no one else. I promised Boomerang I'd take care of him, and so I will. You're all going to treat him with respect. And they all start talking about who like Owen's mum could be. It's not Golden Glider, but they believe that it was. That was the rumor. And Owen's just like, all of you could just go to hell. You think I wanted to come here? You think this is the kind of life I want? I don't need you morons. And Abracadabra's like, what's your words, Kid Boomerang, or I'll turn your tongue into a spitting cobra. And Owen just like breaks his wand with his boomerang. He's like, save it, Mandrake. No wonder my dad was a joke. He was surrounded by you guys. And everyone starts getting mad, and Cold is just like, that's enough. We're not here to fight. We're here to pay respects, and then we all go our own way. Meanwhile, Cheetah, the Wonder Woman villain, shows up at Zoom's cell and is basically just like, hey Zoom, why don't you come out there and team up with me? And he just like exits his cell because apparently he was always able to do that. He just gets out and he's just like, what do you want, Cheetah? He's like, you're playing possum, aren't you? I can hear your heart beating quicker and quicker. And he's like, what do you want? What do I want, Zoom? I want you. So basically she knows that this entire time Zoom has been pretending to be frozen. Like, he's been conscious the entire time. He could escape whenever he wanted, but he was obviously planning something. And now he's got plans with Cheetah. Cheetah presumably wants to use Zoom to help her kill Wonder Woman. So that will lead into a 2-issue crossover between Wonder Woman and Flash that we will be covering soon. Not after this, but in a future issue. So, after the funeral, a bunch of the rogues started going crazy, throwing boomerangs. It's apparently a ritual that they have. Every time somebody dies, they go crazy and start attacking people. And so Chaya is just like, let's just hope no one else kicks it. And Wally's just like, what a wish, huh, Murillo? So Wally heads back to the garage where he gets to see Wheeler and apologizes to him and promises that he'll never mess up anyone's cars ever again, because last time that happened it caused a lot of problems. And so Wally then decides to go and get some tools for Wheeler, and while he's heading off to do that, Batman appears and is basically just like, we need to talk. You know, Tim's dad is dead and it's because of one of your rogues, so you need to button up and get them sorted. And Wally's like, what do you think I'm doing, Batman? Like, first of all, the only reason you're touching me right now is because I want you to. You know, it's because I'm letting you touch me. But second thing is like, do you think my rogues are idiots? Like, they're not idiots. Your guys might be, like, maniacal, insane guys that, you know, that leave clues and things. You know, my guys are a lot more organized than that. You know, they work together. They're not idiots. They might dress up in colorful costumes and stuff, but, like, they're really cool, and they're hard to deal with, you know? Like, are you saying to me that you would have preferred it if, like, the Joker or Two-Face killed Tim's dad? And Batman doesn't answer Wally? Because Wally's right. Batman would have preferred it if it was one of his own rogues. It's almost like he's angry that it's not one of his rogues, where he's just like, oh, it's one of your rogues. And I don't want to have to fight one of your rogues because I know that I can't beat your rogues because they often have superpowers. And I can't deal with that. Wally then just says to Batman, like, just go home, go find Tim and just tell him what you told Dick. You know, that thing you told him before he joined the Titans, the thing that stuck with him, the one thing you said that stuck with him for the rest of his life. And it doesn't show us what Wally means, but Batman knows what he means, and if I made an assumption, he told Batman to just go and tell Tim that he loves him. That's all he needs to do, is just go tell Tim that he loves him. I wonder if there was a Batman issue that came out at around this time that included Batman, you know, talking to Tim and telling him that he loved him. I think that's what it is. Because I know Batman has told Dick in the past that he loves him, and that's stuck with Dick from that day, you know. So Owen and Captain Cold and Weather Wizard and Mirror Master and Trickster all head back to their base, and they're all chilling out, and Cold is just like, hey, so how you doing, kid? Like, how you feeling? And Owen's like, yeah, I'm fine. It's just something that I really want to do, and I want you to help me do it. And Cold is like, just name it, son. Meanwhile, the original Trickster, James Jesse, and the Pied Piper, Hartley Rathaway, are currently looking at possible candidates to join them because obviously their goal is to track down the bad rogues and take care of them by any means necessary. Like, it's heavily hinted that, like, Jesse James is willing to kill rogues if he has to. And Piper's like, maybe we should have gone to the funeral. And James is like, what are you talking about? Like, I know the rogues made us feel like we had a home, but, like, did you really care enough about Captain Boomerang to go to his funeral? And he's like, I don't know. Something about this seems wrong somehow. We're crossing a line, James. He's like, we're just doing what we have to, Piper. What we've been ordered to. They want the rogues taken down for good, and Captain Boomerang's going to help us do just that. And it's revealed that they have Captain Boomerang's dead body, and they're hooking all sorts of cables up into his head, presumably to try and bring him back to life under their control, so that they can use him in the coming war. And so that's where the issue ends. It ends on that grim note. A very grim picture of Captain Boomerang's dead body, with like all the bullets in it, like fresh. Pretty messed up. And so now we're going to move on to issue 218, which is another rogue profile issues. These issues tend to follow different rogues and their origins. This one is going to be all about Heatwave, aka Mick Rory. Alright, so this next issue is one of those issues where I feel very conflicted because there's a lot I like about this issue, but then there's one thing in particular that I don't like the idea of, and I know what kind of direction it's going in, and it's a direction that I don't like. So obviously this issue is all about Heatwave, so we get to see some of his origin. But before we get into that, let's talk about what Heatwave is getting up to in the present during the story. So right now, Mick Rory, aka Heatwave, is working for James Jesse to catch different rogues, some of the bad rogues. He's been sent to go and deal with Murmur, so he's currently investigating some murders that Murmur has been executing on young women, often cutting their tongues out. It's pretty messed up. So he goes into a building and he finds a woman's body, and that's when we get to see some of his origin. So when Mick was a child, he just grew up in a regular everyday family, and his dad would often go on camping trips with him and his brother, teaching them how to survive, especially when it comes to making fire. And Mick loved making fire. He became so mesmerized by it. And one night he was having dinner with his family, and he saw a candle, and he put his hand over the fire and burnt his hand, and everyone was just like, oh my god, like, Mick, are you okay? And so he went to bed that night, and all he could think of was the flame. And so he went downstairs to get more of it. He went down. He hates being cold. That's like Mick's thing, is that he hates being cold. And so he finds a pack of matches. He lights them. He looks at the candle, and then he sees the curtain, and he lights the curtain instead. And the entire house burns down with his family on the top floor. And it's not like Mick wanted to kill his family. He wanted to help them. Like, he wanted to go and find the police, but he couldn't. He couldn't stop staring at the flames. He was mesmerized by them. And as he looked at his father looked at him and thought the exact same thing as Mick did, which is, why? Like, why are you doing this? Why can't you do anything? And so, yeah, Mick watches as his family dies. A tear falls from his eyes as he stares at the flames. And so, yeah, Mick finds this, in the present day, Mick finds this body of a girl who's been killed by Murmur, and that's when the police show up. And because Mick is a Heatwave, this cop is a bit of an asshole and tries to make it out like Heatwave is a bad guy. So he's like, oh, I think he's going to do something. And he starts like shooting at Mick, and Mick lights the ground afire, like lights a fire in front of them, and is like, get back. All right, I'm getting out of here. And he runs off. And that's when we get to see a little bit more of his past, where when Mick went to school, in order to stop himself from burning down the school, he would wear winter clothing, because that would give him the closest feeling he could get to being hot and being like, he loved being sweaty. And I'm like, man, hey, If you love being sweaty, Heatwave, maybe the best way to deal with your mental illness is by just having sex all the time, because then you'd be hot and sweaty 24/7 and you'd be enjoying it too. So one day, he went to a local slaughterhouse with a friend of his, and his friend locked him in the freezer for fun, like as a joke. But obviously Mick hates being cold, so he took it as like, torture. He was left in there for like a day. And so, after he escaped, he lit the kid's house on fire and killed him and his entire family. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Or at least he felt he had to. And after that, he went on the run, just went off on his own. Eventually, he came across a traveling circus, and they hired him as their fire eater because he loves fire. So a job as a fire eater is the perfect job for Mick. And he loved this job. He loved being at the circus. He was going to have a date with one of the girls at the circus. Her name is Janice. He's like, I'm going to cook you my grandma's famous chili recipe. And then that night, for whatever reason, he just decided to light the entire circus on fire because he felt the need to. And he killed everyone. But this time, this is when he realized how sick he was. He took photos. And then as soon as he looked at them when he got home, he ripped them up in disgust. And he realized that he needed another outlet for creating fire. Because he had this need for it. So that's when he saw Captain Cold on the news and was like, hey, that guy's dressed up like that and he's shooting ice. I'll do the same and shoot fire. So he created himself a costume, and that's how he became Heatwave. So he went and helped Captain Cold in a fight against the Flash. And that's when they became friends and longtime rivals. Captain Cold introduced Heatwave to the rest of the Rogues, and they had like a fierce rivalry with each other, and eventually, Cold was... not Cold. Mick, Heatwave, was captured by the Flash and locked up, and it was when he was locked up that he realized that he needed to get help, and that he didn't enjoy being a criminal. Especially, like, being in a prison is cold, and Heatwave doesn't like the cold, so he never wants to end up in a prison ever again, and that's what kind of forces him to try and reform himself, because he's like, well, if I become a good guy, I'll never have to go to prison ever again. Murmur is trying to kill another woman in the present, and Heatwave comes to stop him, and Murmur attacks Heatwave and cuts open his jacket, like Heatwave's suit, which is full of fuel, and then smashes a nearby microwave and causes a massive explosion because the fuel from Heatwave's suit leaked, which, burnt the entire building down, and Heatwave kind of sees it and stops for a moment, and he's like mesmerized by the fire, and then he attacks Murmur. He's like, "You're done, sicko!" Punches him in the face, and that's when Cold comes and protects Murmur. And Heatwave is like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you protecting this guy?" And Cold is like, "Because, as much as I don't like Murmur, we need him in order for our plan, and we don't want you in Keystone. We don't want people like you here, Heatwave. The scum that reformed." And he's like, "And I know how you feel." He's like, "Show your faces in Keystone again, we're putting you on ice, and I know how you feel about ice." And Heatwave's like, "Burn in hell," and shoots fire at him. And Cold is like, "Already did, remember?" And they shoots ice back and causes a massive explosion, leaving Heatwave knocked out. Cold disappears. Heatwave gets up. He finds Murmur's mask and is like, "Damn it." Heatwave heads back to Pied Piper, where they have a little bit of conversation about what's going on, and the trickster shows up, like James Jesse shows up. He's like, "You did fine. You found Murmur. You saved someone's life. Cole just got in your way, like he always did. It's not your fault." And so Heatwave after that heads to a place called Frank's Bar, where he has a drink. He asks for a lemonade and a shot of tequila. He gets given his tequila. He sees a band of matches nearby. He lights one and burns the entire bar down. And as he walks away, he thinks to himself, "I'm not a villain. I'm just sick. And Captain Cold is going to burn. They are all going to burn." And so this is one of those situations where I don't know if Jeff Johns is necessarily trying to make Heatwave into a villain again, but he is actively doing so just by cycling backwards on his development. Like he's trying to do like a complicated situation with Heatwave where it's like he's not a villain, he's just sick and he needs help. But this kind of story just ends up turning him back into a supervillain anyway, because most writers don't care about making villains deep like this, you know? They kind of just see it as like, oh, he's a supervillain and he's just going to remain a supervillain. And I will say, like, once Heatwave becomes a supervillain again, he never reforms again as far as I know. He just remains a supervillain forever. And it's really disappointing because Mick Rory felt like one of those villains where it was like, much like the Pied Piper, he could have stayed reformed forever. Like, he really could have. Because Piper does. Like, Piper remains reformed to this very day. So there's no reason why Heatwave couldn't. You know, I'm sick of people thinking that, like, it's impossible for villains to stay reformed. They can stay reformed. They really can. You know, the writers just have to care enough to keep them reformed and not, you know, want to use them as a supervillain. And instead find interesting ways to use them as heroes instead, which people were doing that with Heatwave. I was really enjoying with the fact that, like, Heatwave was a member of the FBI, he was a part of Cadmus for a while. Like, I just kind of like Heatwave kind of like jumping around between different companies and stuff and working for different people as a good guy, you know. I feel like if I was to ever write The Flash, one of my goals would be to reform Heatwave and then replace him with a different Heatwave so that there's more of a chance that he would stay reformed. Because normally, if you introduce a new character that can take over that title after somebody has reformed, there's more of a chance that that character will then stay reformed, you know, especially if you make the new character a very good character, you know, someone that people can actually care about and want to use. I don't know. Just thinking, just spitballing here. So that's the end of issue 218. So now we are going to be moving on to, I think it's Flash 219. It's either Flash 219 or one of the Wonder Woman issues, because we have the Wonder Woman and Flash crossover coming up. So it's Flash issue 219. So Flash 219, the art for this one is done by Justiniano instead. Still written by Jeff Johns. This is a Wonder Woman and Flash crossover issue. All you really need to know about Wonder Woman at this point is that she had just recently had a fight with Medusa, and that has left her blinded. So Wonder Woman is currently blind. Diana is having to teach herself how to fight blind, which is one of the parts of, like, Greg Rucka's Wonder Woman run that, like, is one of the things they like about his run, is that he experiments with Wonder Woman by doing interesting stuff like this, like blinding her and so that she has to learn a new way to fight, like things like that. Really testing her character. So Wally sees that there's some reporting going on at Iron Heights Penitentiary, so he heads over there because Zoom has managed to escape. And when he gets there, he finds out that it's Linda who is doing the reporting. And he gets kind of mad because he's like, why are you reporting Zoom of all things after everything that he's done to us? And Linda's just like, Wally, leave it, alright? And Wally's like, you know what? She's right. I should stop having a problem with my wife just doing her job. So Wally heads in to talk to Wolf about Zoom's disappearance. And up until this point, Wally believed that Zoom was trapped, unable to move, like completely comatose. And Ashley Zolomon enters the room and is like, well, he's awake, and I believe that the reason he might be awake might be because of what the turtle did when he caused a ruckus in the penitentiary. Like, maybe his powers somehow awoke Zolomon. Personally, I don't think that's the case. From what I've gathered and from what we've seen, it just seems like Zoom was powerful enough to eventually wake himself up from his coma. Like, remembering Ashley and, like, Ashley being in his presence is what woke him up. Ashley is also being very coy about exactly what she's been doing. Like, obviously, she's been visiting Zoom and talking to him. I don't think they've been able to hear what she's saying. They've just been able to see her on the camera, so they think that she's going in there and just talking nothing, like talking nonsense to him or something. But what they don't know is that she's connecting to him on an emotional level still, which makes her a little bit of a liability when it comes to her job in the Force. You know, like she's too emotionally connected to this villain. Like the fact that they're allowing her to work on this case feels a little bit unprofessional. Like usually if you have close ties to a criminal, you're not allowed to work on that criminal's case because there might be some biasy there that will affect your performance. But for some reason, you know, this is a comic book, so they just let her do it. Security guard comes in with the like security, like a picture from the security footage, and it shows that Barbara Minerva, aka Cheetah, was the one who freed Zoom from the cell, and so they gotta wonder why she did it, because they don't know each other. There's actually a moment in this where Barbara and Zoom are talking, and she's talking to Zoom as if she knows who he is. She also talks to him as if she's kind of like in love with him or flirting with him, and Zoom's just like, I'm married, so please no. Like, I'm not interested. But she doesn't really take that as a no. Like, she just continues flirting with him. Like, Cheetah's a little bit of a homewrecker. Yeah, so Wonder Woman is busy fighting Giganta, and she's kind of struggling against Giganta because she's still not used to being blind. But Wally shows up and distracts Giganta by standing on top of her head, which gives Diana time to wrap her lasso of truth around Giganta's neck and pull her to the ground. And so Giganta just crashes into the ocean. And then I guess they just take her away. The thing with Giganta is that, like, do they have to wait for her to shrink again? Like, if she's unconscious, she doesn't just shrink immediately, because she fell unconscious in this and remained her giant size. So do they just have to wait for her to shrink before they can take her away? Or do they bring, like, 6 Apache helicopters in to, like, carry her away to prison or something? I've always wondered about that. So Wally and Diana head off to have a little conversation together. And this is something that I don't like about this crossover. I mean, it's a shocker, right? Something that I don't like about a Jeff Johns written Flash comic. So, you know, I've read a lot of Justice League. Like, not just Justice League America, like the JLA that came out in the 90s. Like, I've read quite a bit of that. But I've also read a lot of Justice League that came before that. Like, I've read a lot of Justice League International and Justice League Europe. And something worthy of note is that Wally and Diana were members of Justice League Europe and Justice League International together. Like, out of all of the Justice League members, Diana is the member that Wally has worked with the most on a team. The only other member he's known more than that is Kyle Rayner, Green Lantern. So in this, it kind of throws me off when the way that Jeff writes Flash and Wonder Woman's relationship is that Wally doesn't really trust Diana for some reason, because she's not human, like because she doesn't understand them, because she comes from Themyscira, so she'll never really understand them and how humans are. I don't know, it just seems a little bit judgmental of Wally to be like that, especially to judge somebody that he arguably knows the most out of everyone in the Justice League. Like, the person that he's worked with the most. Like, why doesn't he trust her? Like, he's... Like, why would he trust, like, Batman and Superman and, like, all these other characters more than somebody that he's worked alongside with a lot longer than them? Like, it just doesn't really make much sense to me, and it's just one of those, like, moments in comic books where you know that the writer hasn't really kept up with the history of the characters. Like, it's not hard to kind of go back a little bit and be like, and like refresh yourself on Diana and Wally's relationship in comic books. It's as easy as just reading Justice League International and Justice League Europe and seeing that they were on a team together for like 8 years before, you know, the JLA started again. But enough about that. They decide that they're going to team up in order to find Zoom and Cheetah in order to stop them. what Cheetah wants with Zoom is that she wants him to teach her how to run as fast as he does. Um, for some reason, they never bring up the point that she is called the Cheetah and that she is powered by a Cheetah God, and the fact that she doesn't have super speed is a weird thing because you would think that being Cheetah and having Cheetah powers would mean that one of her superpowers is super speed because cheetahs are known for being really fast, but apparently she doesn't have speed. Like she runs as fast as a human can. Um, yeah, she wants to run as fast as like Zoom, but Zoom doesn't even run fast. Zoom just can control time, so like he can slingshot himself back and forth through time. Like he's not actually running through far. Like he's not actually running fast. He's traveling through time. It's hard to explain. Meanwhile, Captain Cold and the rest of the rogues, including Owen Mercer, are trying to figure out who Owen's mother is. So Cold is just going through all these speedsters and being like, these speedsters are all women, but they're too young to have had a kid like you. Unless you are similar to Bart, in which you... Because Bart grew to like 5 feet in 5 months or some shit. So maybe you did too. And so that kind of makes it even harder to figure out who your mum is, because it could literally be anyone. Mirror Master enters with the turtle for some reason. Cold mentions that they had to bring the turtle in, I guess because he's really powerful, so they need him on their side. Because he's like, things are getting dire. And Mirror Master is like, hey, there was a... Oh, not Mirror Master. Weather Wizard is like, hey, there was a note on the door for you, Cold. And Cold opens up the note and it says, Captain, my good captain, you have your rogues, I'll have mine. May the best man win, the top. So it turns out that the top is, creating his own team of rogues, and that the rogue war, I thought it was going to be just like two sides facing one another. Captain Cold's side, and then you have James Jesse and his rogues fighting them. But it turns out there's going to be three sides at the moment, which is the top versus Captain Cold versus James Jesse, the original trickster. So we're really building up to this rogue war at the moment. Barbara continuously fails to learn how to run at super speed. A cop car shows up, and Barbara is like, I'll deal with them. And Zoom is like, no, I used to be a cop, so I feel for them. So I'll kill them instantly so that they don't feel any pain. I don't know what he does, but he kind of just like... The air around him just kind of vibrates and the car explodes. Like he uses his time powers or speed powers to blow up the car. And he then picks up a badge and, she's like, what do you know about the Flash? And he's like, everything. I still know everything. Wally. And he's like, I also know everything about, like, the cheetah, too. So, for some reason, Zoom has knowledge on the original cheetah. I guess he just knows everything about rogues. I thought Hunter Zolomon's whole thing was just knowing everything about the Flash's rogues. I didn't know that he literally knew everything about every single rogue in existence, because he knows about the original cheetah, Priscilla Rich, from the 1940s. And he tells Barbara Minerva that in order to become the best cheetah that she can possibly be, she needs to become the only cheetah. So she needs to find Priscilla Rich and kill her, which she does. Off panel, she goes off and kills Priscilla Rich, who is like an 80-year-old woman at this point, so it's kind of sad that, like, Cheetah just goes and kills this old woman who can't even fend for herself and isn't even a criminal anymore. So, Wally and Wonder Woman head to Priscilla's house, where they find her dead body. They don't know it's Priscilla yet, they just know that an old woman has been attacked by Zoom and Cheetah, and they find her dead body, and it's actually the posters in her room that clue her in on who she is, and Wonder Woman knows who she is, because Priscilla Rich faced Diana's mother during the 40s when she was Wonder Woman. And they hear a voice that's like, are you scared yet, Flash? Wonder Woman's like, what is that? It sounds like a voice, but... And Wally's like, it's... Ah! And he just gets, like, slashed by Cheetah as she, like, just smashes into him. She just runs in and goes... And Wonder Woman's like, Flash? And she has a voice that's like, I made her better, faster, and maybe... I'll make you a better hero too, Wonder Woman. And Zoom like appears in front of Wonder Woman alongside Cheetah. Cheetah has Wally by the head and is like Wally's bleeding everywhere because she's just like gashed his chest, and she's preparing to kill Wally while Wonder Woman is probably going to have to fight Zoom. I imagine that the way it's going to go is that like Wally's going to fight Cheetah and Diana is going to fight Zoom. So it's really interesting. I always like it when superheroes fight each other's villains instead of fighting their own. Alright, Wonder Woman issue 214, written by Greg Rucka with art by Drew Johnson and Ray Snyder. We conclude the two-part story involving Wonder Woman teaming up with the Flash and Professor Zoom teaming up with Cheetah. Cheetah currently has super speed abilities, so she's able to fight the Flash, while Zoom decides that he wants to fight Wonder Woman because he wants to try and quote-unquote make her a better hero. And so it's really interesting seeing these villains fight heroes that they don't normally fight. Like, Cheetah is just messing up Wally throughout their entire fight. Like, she scratches his spinal cord. Basically, she's testing, like, his healing abilities and is like, what if I scratch your spinal cord? See how fast you heal from that. And what if I take out the tendon in your leg and see how hard that makes it for you to run? Like, are you going to be able to heal fast enough in order to, continue fighting me? And it gets to the point where, Cheetah gets a little bit, she starts to, like, sexually assault Wally, who is a married man. She climbs on top of him and is basically just, like, threatening to rape him at this point. Like, literally threatening to do that. Like, she is planning on raping Wally, which is really messed up. And the fact that it's like, it's kind of treated quite lighthearted in this, almost like it's kind of like a bit of a joke, But she doesn't get to, like, she starts kissing him, and as she kisses him, Wally then is like, you might be a speedster, but I'm a speed thief. And he takes the speed from Barbara, so she no longer has super speed. The thing that kind of goes through my head at this point in time is the way that Greg Rucka writes it. Wally couldn't take her speed unless she was kissing him. But as we know, we've read a lot of Flash comics, Wally can take people's speed regardless of what distance they are away from him. He doesn't have to touch them or anything. He just does it. So he kind of just let her kiss him. Like, this entire time, he could have just taken her speed away from her. The whole time. But he just didn't for some reason. I don't know why. I guess he just wanted to get beaten to a pulp and have his spinal cord slashed and tendon ripped out. I don't know. It's one of those examples of, I think, a writer not fully understanding the character's abilities or changing them just so that it fits the story. Like nerfing Wally at this point just so that there's a reason for him and Barbara to fight, because in reality, he could have just taken her speed right away and the fight would have been over. But you can't have that. We got 20 pages here that we got to fill. So you got to kind of strengthen it out a little bit more. Now, the fight that's actually really worth talking about is the fight between Wonder Woman and Professor Zoom, because of the reasons why he's fighting her is because he wants to make her into a hero, and he believes that the best way to become a hero is through tragedy. So he says to Wonder Woman, what if because you're doing this for your people in Themyscira, right? But they're still alive. So, like, what if I went to Themyscira and I killed everyone? Like, would that make you try even harder at being a hero? And, Zoom is really strong, by the way. Because he can travel through time, he can hit Wonder Woman with, like, the force of max speed or the force of a sonic boom, which hurts her. Like, he basically hits as hard as Superman. In fact, she says in this that, like, she hasn't been, like, hit this hard before. Which means that Zoom is hitting her harder than Superman, because she's fought Superman. So she says that, like, yeah, Zoom's punches are harder than Superman's, like, which is a pretty insane, measurement of strength to place on somebody. So Zoom heads off to Themyscira like he said he would, and he just grabs a random person at Themyscira who probably has a name, I just don't know their name, grabs them and just beats the crap out of them. He turns to Wonder Woman and he's like, hey, I just punched this woman 200 times in a single second. What happens if I punch her 200 more times? Do you think she's going to die? And Wonder Woman's like, well, she better not, because I'll kick your ass. And so she goes straight for Zoom with her lasso of truth, wraps it around him, and throws him, up into the air with her rope. Because apparently she can just lift somebody up into the air with the rope. Like, change gravity. And then she brings it down, smashing him into the ground. And then, he looks at, she looks at him dead in the eyes and says, you know the answer, don't you? After all, what kind of hero teaches a sociopath super speed, then watches her murder an 84-year-old woman? Villain. Because, she's kind of questioning him, you call yourself a hero, but are you really a hero, or are you a villain? Well, I'm gonna tell you, you're a villain because you've done some messed up shit. Let's go. And she just, grabs Zoom with her, lasso of truth and flies off with him. Wally beats the crap out of Cheetah after he steals her speed, and then Wonder Woman arrives with Zoom in tow. Cheetah begins, transforming back to normal, because there's a panel in this where, her hand is just a normal human hand. She places it on Zoom's shoulder, and, or maybe that's just a symbolic kind of thing, where she turns her hand human so that she can, touch Zoom and, comfort him or something. She then slashes Wonder Woman's wrist. So Wonder Woman lets go of the lasso of truth, freeing Zoom, and Zoom grabs Barbara and they teleport away. And they head off to go and see Professor Psycho, or Dr. Psycho, I mean. And because Barbara's like, this guy can help you, Zoom. Professor Zoom, may I introduce you to Dr. Psycho? And this plot goes nowhere. At the very end, she introduces him to Dr. Psycho, and Zoom will not... there's no plot of Zoom teaming up with Dr. Psycho. It's almost like Greg Rucka was planning on using Zoom more, but then Jeff did Rogue War, which, requires Zoom, and Rogue War kind of... It doesn't end Zoom's story entirely, but it definitely, takes him off of the table for a while. And so, yeah, this plotline that Greg Rucka was setting up, I think, just doesn't exist because of that. It just fell apart. Because it also hints that, Wally and Diana are going to team up against Cheetah and Zoom again. Because, Diana's just like, we just lost, didn't we? And Wally's like, yeah, we lost. This time. And he kind of looks behind him at a plot that is never going to happen. A crossover that isn't going to happen. It's just such a weird ending to this. It kind of ends on a cliffhanger, setting up a story that we're never going to see. But yeah, that's the end of the Wonder Woman and Flash crossover, and that leads us directly into Jeff Johns' final arc in his Flash run. That's right, we've made it to the end of Jeff Johns' Flash run with Rogue War, a 6-part event. And so we're going to be starting that next. And I'm really excited to read Rogue War because, from what I heard, it is Jeff Johns ending on a high after, some, after Ignition and Secret of Barry Allen. Yeah, so let's get straight into it. So before we move on to Rogue War, if you're enjoying this episode so far, then please feel free to subscribe to the channel, because I'd love to have you here. And so turn on notifications so that you'll receive notifications for new videos in the future. New videos every single Sunday. Alright, Rogue War Chapter 1. It begins with a little monologue from Captain Cold talking about the fact that he and the Rogues, they do crime, they kill, they steal, and they always make sure that they stick together, except recently, there are some Rogues that have splintered off and created their own group, and so a war is brewing between the Rogues. And it's going to be starting very soon. So we begin at the FBI headquarters, or a FBI headquarters, I guess, where a couple of security guards are talking about like James Jesse and the Pied Piper, because even though those rogues are working with the FBI doesn't really like them, and they still talk shit about them. Then one of the guys just suddenly starts like choking, and it turns out that Mirror Master is holding his reflection hostage. He has a glass shard like directed at his neck, and then he just slits the guy's throat. So blood just starts spilling out of this guy's neck, crashes to the ground, and dies. The other guard shoots at the mirror, and then gets struck by lightning and killed by Weather Wizard. And there's another guard who tries to call security, and Mark is just like, no personal phone calls, and shoots a bunch of snow at him, killing him, or like a big blast of air, which kills the guard. They then open up the elevator and head into it, and Mirror Master and the Trickster are there with him. Axel Walker specifically, the new Trickster, are with him. They exit the elevator, and Axel throws a bunch of like his Trickster bombs out, presumably killing a bunch of other guards. And then Owen Mercer, the new Captain Boomerang, smashes his way through one of the new doors with the help of one of the nearby doors with the help of Mirror Master, and breaks directly into the room where Captain Boomerang, like Digger Harkness's body, was supposedly being kept, because as we've learnt in the previous issue, Digger Harkness's body is like under the control of the FBI. We'll find out why they have his body a little bit later, but yeah, they break in there to try and find his body, but his body is missing, and Owen's really mad, and he's going to kill the scientist there, and Leonard Snart, Captain Cold, shows up, and he's like, is killing him going to make you feel better, Owen? And Owen's like, it might, and then Cold's like, then do it. And then he doesn't, and they have a little bit of a conversation about why Cold is being so nice to him, where Owen is like, are you just being nice to me because you think that my mum might be your sister, and so you're just acting like an uncle? And Cold is like, no, it has nothing to do with blood. Like, we're rogues, we stick together, we bleed together. It doesn't matter who your mum is, like, we'll be helping you, because all you want is to find your dad's body and give him the funeral that he deserves. And that's what we want as well, so we want to help you. And then Owen turns to the scientist and is like, what are you looking at? And Cole's just like, he's looking at Captain Boomerang. And Owen's like, yeah, he is. And then he slits the guy's throat with his boomerang off panel. So we head over to the Combines Arena, which I don't know if that's named after the Combine, which was like the group of, it was like the mafia group that was created by Mark Waid that didn't really go anywhere. But Wally and Linda and Reese and Wheeler are all here just watching the game. We find out that Reese is dating the goalie of the hockey team. Not that that really matters. Wally and Linda are preparing to go and see the doctor because they have an appointment with the doctor. It's essentially just to find out whether or not they still have a chance of having their children, or if the children really are gone, even though I thought that was already the proven case. I don't really know, but they go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, situation hasn't changed, sorry. And Wally and Linda then just like hug one another, not really crying, they're just sad, even though you would think that they would be like bawling their eyes out, because like it's a big thing to find out that you're just not gonna be having children. Maybe it's a case of like, maybe it's not just a case of Linda has lost the children. Maybe it's because they went to the doctor and she found out that she can't have children in the conventional way anymore. Like, she's been ruined by Professor Zoom. Either way, we find Chaya and Murillo with Ashley Zolomon Ashley Zolomon is currently complaining because apparently Dr. Alchemy has been given over to the GCPD because he is insane and they think that he'd be better off in Arkham Asylum. And Ashley believes that he's too powerful for the GCPD to be able to handle. And so she's mad that they've given Alchemy over to them. She's also disappointed in herself because she really believed that she was able to help Eobard. No, not Eobard. Why did I say Eobard? Hunter Zolomon. She truly believed that she was able to help him and has started coming to terms with the fact that her ex-husband really is a psychopath and he's never going to change. He can't be saved. So she heads out on her own just to go for a walk, and suddenly some music starts playing. She falls asleep. It's Pied Piper, and she then later wakes up inside a different FBI facility because James Jesse took Captain Boomerang's body and moved it to another place. And the idea is that they have this gear hooked up to his head, and they're going to be able to bring him alive just long enough so that Ashley Zolomon can get everything they need out of him. Like, they need all sorts of information from him about the rogue's weaknesses and stuff, because their plan is to either take down the other rogues, or if they have no choice, kill them. So, meanwhile, Jay Garrick shows up, which is cool. We haven't seen him in a Flash comic for a while. He's just running through the streets after helping a couple of people, and then he just gets knocked over by Professor Zoom. And Zoom approaches him. He's like, Wally West still hasn't learned enough tragedy. I need you, Jay. I need your help. And he's holding like a pair of he's like holding some blueprint plans. And he's like, with this. And Jay's just kind of looking up at him like, oh, like what the hell? So what's this about? Well, we're probably going to find out in the later issues. The rest of the rogues head back to their base after Owen has killed that scientist. And when they get there, they come face to face with James Jesse, the trickster, and he's actually wearing his old trickster costume, Pied Piper, Heatwave, and Magenta, and they are there to kill Cold and his crew. And so we'll find out how this turns out in the next issue. I think there's going to be... We're already getting into the actual war itself. So I'm expecting there's going to be some rogues fighting each other in the next issue. So looking forward to that. Alright, Chapter 2. The two rogue teams face one another. James Jesse is just there to talk, but Mick Rory isn't. He's there to cause trouble. Owen's like, where's my dad? And Mick is like, and speaking of... He's like, if I had to take a guess, Junior, I'd say he's back in hell. And speaking of hell, hey, Cold, catch! And he shoots a bunch of fire at Captain Cold, who draws his gun and shoots ice back, which causes a massive explosion of fog and mist. And so Cold's team manages to get away, and James is just like, you idiot, Mick. Like, don't cross the line unless I tell you to. If you do that again, I'll get Piper to put you to sleep. Possibly forever. So Piper starts controlling all of his rats to go help them find where Cold's team has gone to. And Magenta uses her abilities of like finding magnetic pulses to kind of track where the other characters are, like the Cold's group. Meanwhile, Captain Boomerang is brought to life, and Ashley Zolomon doesn't want to try and get information out of him because she's like, oh, he might have been a villain, but like he doesn't deserve this. And we leave that on a little bit of a cliffhanger of Digger Harkness coming back to life and mentioning his son, just being like, Owen. Meanwhile, Wally is servicing on a car, and he hears that there's a couple of explosions going down in the center of the city, so he heads off to go and check it out as the Flash. Meanwhile, Cold's crew head back to their little base where all their weapons are. They go to grab everything because Cold is ready to do the one thing that he didn't want to do, but now he feels like he has to, which is to kill his former friends, the other rogues. But that's when those rogues, led by James Jesse, blow open the doors to Cold's little base, smashing straight through. And so they immediately just start fighting each other. You know, Owen starts throwing boomerangs. Weather Wizard is just like, get out of here, and just blows James Jesse's team straight out of the sewers, like with a massive lightning strike. Mick heads off because he just wants to burn everything. Like, he's starting to lose control, and he's just like, I need to burn everything. I'm gonna burn Captain Cold. I'm gonna burn all of them. And Piper's just like, Mick, wait. Magenta starts fighting Weather Wizard, and Weather Wizard is like, don't you understand? Like, I control the weather, which includes the magnetic polarity of the Earth, which means I can control your magnetic polarity. So let's see what happens if I reverse it. And so he starts reversing her magnetic polarity, which causes Magenta a ton of pain. But she gets saved by James Jesse, who shoots a bunch of chewing gum, like a massive glob of chewing gum, at Weather Wizard's head. But then a massive slinky wraps around his neck, and we get a little fight between James Jesse and Axel Walker, both tricksters. And James is like, you are not the trickster, you know, and you're going to stop being the trickster, and I'm going to take you to jail. And he shoots a fake pair of teeth out, which bite Axel on the shoulder. He's just like, this kid bites back. Which is weird, because Axel calling the trickster a kid, like James Jesse a kid, is weird, because Axel is the kid. I don't know if the dialogue was written wrong in this or something, but it just feels like a weird thing for the kid to say about an adult, is to call him a kid. He shoots a trickster bomb at James, which blows him away and causes him to fall off the building. Pied Piper faces Owen Mercer, and who like shoots his boomerang at Piper, cutting through his shoulder. He also cut, because Piper tried to use his pipe to put everyone to sleep, and Owen cut it in half as well. Piper's just like, tell me where Mirror Master is and I'll give you a hint of where your father's body is. And Owen's like, I'm not like you, Piper. I won't screw over the rogues. They won't fill that empty hole. They'll do nothing but drag you down. Well, right now, thanks to you, they're all I've got. Like, they're all I've got. And so Chaya and Morello start hiding into the center of the city as well. The Flash speeds ahead of them, and when he gets there, he sees that the entire city is just being ravaged by tornadoes and fire and all sorts of shit, and he sees the rogues all fighting one another. It's a really great 2-page spread of the Flash just arriving and all of the rogues fighting each other, and everything is just in chaos. Heatwave and Captain Cold are also fighting one another, and Heatwave is just like, I'll burn you out. I'll burn down this whole city to get to you, Snart. And Snart's like, that was always your problem, Mick. And Mick's like, you were always my problem. Still are. Nope, you're lying to yourself again. You say you're going to fire that gun. Burn everything for what? To bring me in? To play stooge for the government? No way. I know you. I know you better than you know yourself. Why are you really doing this? Why? You're still sick. And you're still a rogue. And Cold just like launches himself at Heatwave and smashes through a nearby wall. Wally runs past and puts out all the fires with his super speed, and then gets blasted on both sides by both fire and ice as he runs in between Heatwave and Captain Cold's guns, which I think is a recreation of a very old panel in like the Barry Allen comics, where Barry Allen was frozen and burnt at the same time by Heatwave and Cold. So it's a nice little throwback to that, which sends Wally colliding into the ground, unconscious, and then he quickly gets up. Like, he's like unconscious for a very quick sec, and then he gets up and is like, what the hell are you doing, Rory? You're reformed. And Heatwave's like, I know, the fire. You put the beautiful fire out. And Mick just starts looking at where the fire used to be, staring at it. And Wally's like, Mick? And Captain Cold's like, gotcha. And then all of a sudden, before he can shoot his cold gun, a massive screeching sound happens, which causes everyone to like put their hands on their head and be like, ah! And then a huge like tornado just whips Heatwave, Cold, and Wally around, throwing them. There is a garbage dump that almost hits Wally in the head, gets sent flying at him, and it turns out it's the top. He's like, remember what I told you, Flash? One day I'll take it all back. well, today is unfortunately that day. And so the top just appears next to him and starts creating like a whirlwind of energy around him. And so we'll find out what the top is talking about. Obviously, he said to Wally that he's controlled a lot of the minds of the rogues. He didn't tell Wally which ones, that was kind of the mystery, but he says that he has put a lot of the rogues under mind control, and that one day he's going to switch off that mind control and those rogues are going to go back to being evil. But Wally doesn't know which ones it's going to be, and neither do we, but we'll find out. Possibly in Chapter 3. Alright, so Chapter 3 is when things get a little bit controversial and my opinions on Rogue War start to shift a little bit, you know. Very specific decisions that Johns has made that I'm not really a big fan of. The top shows up, he starts using his powers against Wally, and says that he is going to undo the mind control that he had done on everyone that, you know, was good. Like, that the rogues who have turned over a new leaf never actually did that, or at least most of them didn't. They were just under mind control by the top. And so, you know, like, he snaps Pied Piper free of his mind control, and Wally quickly, like, grabs him, and that's when Piper kind of, like, wakes up and is like, I've wasted so much time, haven't I? And you helped me do it, Flash. It's time to pay the Piper. Because basically what happens is that once they lose the mind control, like, all of their bad memories flash back into their mind, the things that made them a villain, which then, you know, transform into a villain again. James Jesse gets his mind control turned off, which is really disappointing, because James Jesse is one of those characters who had a genuine redemption, and now it's just been retconned as like, oh, he was under mind control, like he was a member of the FBI and stuff, so it's like, that was cool, and now it's gone. You know, James Jesse is back to being the trickster again, and he beats up a child. He beats up Axel Walker, who is only a teenager. Yeah, he beats the crap out of him and says, don't you ever use the name Trickster ever again. And he actually steals Axel Walker's, like, trickster shoes, and then leaves. Meanwhile, the scientist that is holding Ashley Zolomon hostage, trying to force her to talk to Digger Harkness to learn the information about the rogues. Ashley refuses to do so and actually knocks this guy out, because her hands are tied behind her back, so she knocks him out with her head, and then turns around and knocks him with the chair, which breaks the chair and frees her. She then grabs the med kit and goes over to Boomerang and is like, you know, I'm going to do my best to bench you up, Mr. Harkness, then I'm getting you out of here. And he's like, please, it's too late for me. Owen, tell my son I love him. I wanted to protect him. If the rogues knew his mother was, they'd kill him. She's like, what are you? Tell him to guard our name with his life and stay away from his brother. Listen close. And then he presumably tells her who Owen's mum is, but we don't know who it is. And the next time we see her, Owen dies, and not Owen, Digger dies, and Ashley is just like, I don't know who that woman is, the one that you told me, but she doesn't say his name, so it's still a mystery. So I'm really curious if that's going to get revealed later. So the trickster goes to Owen and Weather Wizard and is like, hey, can I rejoin you guys? I'm a bad guy again. And they're like, you must be a trick. And the trickster's like, nah, it's not a trick. I'll show you. I'll show you proof that I'm actually a bad guy. Meanwhile, Wally finds himself fighting against the Piper. He's like, Hartley. And he's like, I'm the Pied Piper. No, you fought too hard. Your heart is too strong. My heart is dead. And Wally's like, I don't believe that. And he starts spinning around Hartley and is like, there's only one way that I could possibly snap him out of this and make him realize who he really is. And that's by showing him who I really am. And he removes his mask and is like, remember who I am. My name. And Piper sees his face and is like, your face. Wally? And then Hartley just passes out. And Wally's like, I'm sorry, pal. And he quickly drops Hartley off with Linda. And Linda's like, Wally, is that? And he's just like, take care of him, I'll be back. And he zips off. Meanwhile, Heatwave and Cold fight one another, and then Heatwave's mind control is like he's snapped out of his mind control by the Top, which kind of leaves him a little catatonic. Because Top is like, Heatwave will be fine in a minute. Seems he was struggling to break free already. To tell the truth, I'm not sure I fixed that one as well as the others. And Cold's like, fixed? He's like, I broke him before, so I fixed him. Untangled that knot of sainthood I tied in his head. Just like Trickster and the Pied Piper. Our old friends are back, Captain Cold. We don't have any friends in common, Dylan. That hurts, Lenny. Don't you remember that big happy family the Rogues once were? I'm going to put it back together again, and I'm going to lead you all to glory. I'm the only one who properly can. You always thought you were the brains, cultured in art and food and crap. But just because you taste the difference in red wines doesn't mean you are better than anyone else. But I am, and my powers can make you join me. Just like they did the new kids, and Top reveals that he has all of the new rogues, Gerda, Plunder, Murmur, well, there's a lot of ers. I just realized that. There's a lot of ers at the end of, like, John's rogues. Tar Pit and Double Down are all there. And then Wally shows up and is like, you're allowed for a minute, Dylan, and punches Top in the face. And the Top's like, show the Flash a top time, gentlemen. And so all of the new rogues start fighting Wally, and Wally very quickly becomes overwhelmed by them. And the Top is just like, save me a leg, I want a trophy. And then all of a sudden he just gets frozen by Cold. And Cold is like, forget one of the rules. You forgot one of the rules, Top. Rogues shouldn't fight each other. Because when they do, and he just smashes the Top to pieces. It's like, bad things happen. So Roscoe Dillon, a.k.a. the Top, is freaking dead. He just got frozen and smashed to pieces by Cold. It was a cold, like, excuse the pun, but it was a cold moment of, like, Cold just freezing him and killing him. It might be one of the better moments of this arc so far. It makes me almost forgive, undoing all of these redemptions for no real reason. So Ashley is, consoling Captain Boomerang and is like, I don't know who, like, your wife or your son is, but I hope that you, move on in the afterlife. And then all of a sudden the door gets blown open by Weather Wizard, Owen Mercer, and James Jesse, and Weather Wizard is like, what the hell were they doing to him? And James is like, he was alive when we left. And Ashley's like, you're Owen. Yeah, lady, and you're dead. And then a whoosh goes past Ashley, and it's like, rogues, stay away from my wife. And it's Zoom. Zoom shows up in order to protect Ashley Zolomon, which is a really interesting turn that I was not expecting. I mean, I probably should have expected it. It's really not that surprising, but I just wasn't expecting him to show up at this very moment. So, in the next issue, we are going to see Zoom versus the Rogues. Alright, Chapter 4. Zoom has shown up to protect his wife. All that Owen cares about is what happened to his father, like if she killed him or not. They're like, we're not here to hurt you. And Zoom is like, yeah, you threatened my wife? Expect me to understand? No one understands. He's like, what the hell is he saying? Hey, Reverse Flash. Not impressed. And he throws a boomerang at Zoom, and Zoom just crashes it, like catches it, and then he's like, never am I. And then snaps his fingers, creating a massive sonic boom that just blows Owen, Weather Wizard, and the Trickster away. And then he, exits the building, like, because he's trying to, like, help his wife, because his wife is just like, what are you doing, Hunter? And he's like, helping. And Weather Wizard's like, runners, I hate runners. And Zoom's like, and I hate rogues. And so Zoom and Weather Wizard fight each other. Meanwhile, Wally fights the new rogues. First he takes care of Gerda by shoving him into the nearby waters, because it rusts him, and, he hates going rusty. So Wally's just like, have a nice swim. That should keep him crying for a few more hours. Then, Cold appears in front of the new rogues and is like, see, I hoped that when we saw you at the funeral that you were going to side with us, but it turns out you weren't going to play ball and said you were going to do your own thing, so unfortunately, we're probably going to have to kill you like I just did with the Top. Make an example of you. Tar Pit goes to attack Cold, but Heatwave appears and is like, you might be hot, Tar Pit, but my fires are much hotter, and he just like sets Tar Pit alight, and Cold is like, Mick, like, you're right, Len. I'm still a rogue, and there's no escaping that. And so the rest of the rogues are like, look, all right, hold up, Tar Pit. Let's take Captain Cold out. And Murmur is like, nah, like, let's just kill them. And show these old people that, like, the new rogues are, like, hip in town. And Plunder is like, Murmur's got a point, Double Down. I say we wipe out the old men ourselves. And then, before he can finish his sentence, Wally just beats the crap out of Plunder. And then he puts, like, he builds, like, a makeshift containment cell for Murmur. And before he can start fighting Double Down, like, he kind of does. Like, he tries to fight Double Down, and Cold and Heatwave both shoot at Wally at the same time. And then Mirror Master appears in the tops, like a part of his head, because he's in pieces and he's encased in ice. So Mirror Master is able to reflect himself onto the Top's chin and is like, hey Flasher, say hello to the Doctor, because Cold is like, we need backup, Mirror Master. And so Mirror Master brings in Dr. Alchemy. Dr. Alchemy shows up and is like, I hope this doesn't take all afternoon. I left my Bunsen burners on. Meanwhile, Bart sees what's going on the news, and he's like, well, Jay's currently missing at the moment, like, nobody's heard from him. Somebody's got to help the Flash, and it's gonna be Kid Flash. And he puts on his Kid Flash costume and heads off to find Wally. Meanwhile, Zoom fights Weather Wizard, and by fight, I mean he just beats him easy peasy. You know, he runs up a wall, kicks him in the face, knocks him out, and Ashley is like, Hunter! And he's like, I'm not Hunter. And you're not safe here. And he quickly grabs Ashley and brings her over to where Linda and Piper are, and tells her to get acquainted with Linda, who is the wife of the Flash. And then there's this weird moment where, like, Zoom looks at Linda and is like, and, like, smiles at her. And he's like, your future is at hand. And zooms off. Dr. Alchemy kind of messes with the Flash a little bit by, like, you know, messing with his bloodstream, turning it into different chemicals. And then Mirror Master is like, I'm gonna need a bigger mirror. And Cold is like, coming up. And he creates a big, giant ice, like, sculpture that Mirror Master can reflect onto, and he uses that to transport Gorilla Grodd to where they are. So Gorilla Grodd appears out of the ice and immediately starts fighting Wally using his mind control powers. Now Alchemy's just like, savage. Grodd smashes Wally through a ton of buildings and is like, these humans think I'd work with them. The society says I must. But when this war is over, it is I who will rebuild this world, and my throne will be made from your bones. And then Bart comes in and is like, hey Kong, Mario called. He wants his barrels back. And he starts fighting Grodd. Sorry, got this vibrating thing going on. Can't touch me. And Grodd's like, I can still touch your mind, child. Which is a bit of a weird thing for Grodd to say. Probably shouldn't be saying that. And then Alchemy appears and is like, you've had your fun, Grodd, but I have work to do, science to explore. I am a being of myself, Doctor. Like, I'm a being of science myself, Doctor. Then let's preserve this specimen and see what happens when I turn the blood in his veins into formaldehyde. And so he tries to shoot Wally or Bart. I think it's Bart that he's trying to shoot. He tries to shoot Bart with a beam to turn his blood into formaldehyde, but Wally pushes Grodd in the way, so it turns Grodd's blood into formaldehyde as well. He doesn't die, though. He just passes out. Wally and Bart get to safety, but not for long, because they are now surrounded by rogues. But before the rogues can shoot at them, Zoom comes in and just starts beating the crap out of all of them. Like, he zooms through Plunder and is like, you don't belong here, you're from a mirror world. And he just smashes straight through Plunder, destroying him. So I think Plunder's dead now. And then Zoom just grabs Cold by the cuff of his coat. He's like, stop wasting his time, don't you understand? He's like, you're making a big mistake, Zoom. Put me down and walk away. Your story is over. This isn't about the rogues anymore. And he just throws Cold into the big ice sculpture with Mirror Master, like, reflected in it. This is about the Flash now. And he just does a massive sonic boom that just destroys all the other rogues. Like, he just sends them all flying, obliterating them. It's insane. And so Wally's like, get out of here, Bart. And he's like, no way, you need my help. This is too big, which is why I'm here. There hasn't been enough tragedy, Zoom says as he appears and grabs Bart. And Wally's like, no. When will it be enough, Hunter? When will you stop? when you push yourself harder, when you do anything to help people like me. And Bart's like, let me go, Speed Freak, I'm not scared of you. I know what happened. One twist flash, just like Barry did to Thorn. And he's like about to crack Bart's neck, like about to snap it. Then all of a sudden a cocoon happens and a massive blast of pink energy appears between Zoom and Wally as Jay appears within the pink lightning. He screams like, run, Wally, run! And then a voice comes out, a familiar voice comes out of the pink lightning. Thank you for the invite, Mr. Solomon. The professor is here, so let the teaching begin. And so, Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, appears on the cosmic treadmill with Jay Garrick chained to the front of the cosmic treadmill. And so we're about to see Zoom and Reverse Flash team up together. Which, when this first showed up, like when I first saw this page of like Eobard Thawne appearing, I thought it was Zoom at first. I was a little confused because I kind of read into the next issue and they referred to him as Eobard Thawne, and I was like, wait, is it Thawne? Oh yeah, it is, because his eyes are showing. That's the only difference you can tell between like Zoom and Thawne, is that Zoom has his eyes showing, Thawne has his eyes showing, and Hunter Zolomon has like the black eyes with the red pupils. That's the problem with having two villains with very similar costumes. It's kind of hard to tell them apart. Especially because at this point in time it reflects Wally and Barry, where Wally's costume is so similar to Barry Allen's at this point in time that I get why people, mixed them up all the time. Alright, Chapter 5, Eobard Thawne. I hear the Reverse Flash has appeared. The reason why he's here is because Zoom needed his help to use the cosmic treadmill, because he has plans for that, like to use the cosmic treadmill to help Wally learn a lesson. The treadmill is powered by Jay, but they won't need Jay anymore now that the Reverse Flash is actually here. So Reverse Flash and Wally face one another. It's a pretty dead-on fight between them, but Wally manages to zip under Reverse Flash and break Jay free from his chains. Jay then throws his hat at Zoom, and Bart vibrates his body so that the hat goes through him and hits Zoom in the face, which allows Bart to get out of Zoom's grasp. First Flash and Wally continue to trade blows, but Reverse Flash seems to be a bit stronger because he sends Wally flying through a ton of buildings. He's like, what do you want, Hunter? What do you want from me? He wants you to learn. I want you to feel pain. And then Zoom appears in front of Reverse Flash and is like, a single bullet stole my life, Flash. Put me on a path I was never meant to run down. Accident after accident made me into this. You could have prevented all of this. You could have protected Linda. And then Jay appears and is like, you deal with the misfortunes in life, Zoom. You don't dwell on the past. And Zoom's like, the past? You have no idea. And Jay just punches Reverse Flash in the face. Mirror Master appears in front of Captain Cold and is like, Cold, wake up, eh? Wake the hell up. And Jay continues chasing after Reverse Flash. He's like, in all your years, you haven't known the kind of pain I have, old man. And Jay's like, I've lost friends, family, but I didn't blame anyone. I didn't take it out on people. Not until today. And he kicks the wall, sending a strike of lightning up, which hits Reverse Flash, causing him to fall off the top of the wall. Meanwhile, Bart tries fighting Zoom and kicks him in the leg. And because Zoom is like, Bart Allen, the son of Thorne's descendant, Melanie Thorne. The professor knows about you. He knows you betray your lineage. And Bart is like, Allen blood runs through my veins, not his. And Zoom's like, let me see. And he smacks Bart in the face, sending him flying upwards. Reverse Flash falls to the ground as Jay Garrick, runs towards him. Bart grabs Wally out of some rubble and is like, I have Wally, get to the machine. And, oh wait, no, it's not Bart, sorry, it's Reverse Flash. He's like, I have Wally, get to the machine. Zoom gets to the cosmic treadmill, and Reverse Flash grabs Wally and brings him to the cosmic treadmill as well. And Zoom, Reverse Flash, and Wally all turn the cosmic treadmill on, sending them through time, with Jay and Bart unfortunately unable to stop them. And then we get a really cool moment where Wally, Reverse Flash, and Zoom all fight each other while standing on the cosmic treadmill as they travel through time. Basically, the lesson that Professor Zoom is trying to teach Wally is just to show him that one moment when when Zoom killed Wally's children. Like, remember when he like did the sonic boom against Linda? Like, he makes Wally live through that over and over again, and he just keeps telling Reverse Flash like, hey, rewind it, let him live through that again, I want him to live through it again. And so he keeps living this same memory over and over again. And while that's happening, Linda and Ashley Zolomon and Pied Piper are all having a little chat together, and then all of a sudden Linda just collapses to her knees, her hands on her stomach, and they're all just like, oh, Linda, oh my god, Linda. So she's having like stomach pains, and I think it's because they keep going back in time and doing it to her past self over and over again, so her present self is feeling the same pain. As Zoom, Reverse Flash, and Wally travel through time, they accidentally it causes like a rupture at a time where a younger Digger Harkness, aka Captain Boomerang, is just chilling. Strike of pink lightning hits him, and he gets sent through time, where he ends up in the future, and he comes face to face with a mysterious silhouetted woman who is presumably Owen Mercer's father. And this woman, I believe, is Melanie Thorne. We don't see her face, but she has the same hair as Melanie, and as we know earlier, Melanie Thorne is Bart's mother. So, is it going to be revealed that, like, Owen Mercer is Bart's brother from the past? It's like one of those weird situations where Bart has a brother that was born in the present, but Bart wasn't actually born until the future. It's kind of like how when Reverse Flash shows up and he's like, I have a legacy that exists before I was even born. So it's like the reverse, which I love. Like, it's just a really funny idea, because I never even thought of that. I was like, yeah, Zoom is technically a legacy character, but he's a legacy character that came before Reverse Flash, technically. And so, yeah, Wally keeps reliving the same memory over and over again of Linda being beaten up by Zoom, and as they are continuing to try and make him live through the same memory over and over again, they are stopped when a mysterious person appears behind them and is like, hey, Professor, I've been looking for you everywhere. And obviously you can probably guess who it is. It's Barry Allen. Barry Allen shows up on his own cosmic treadmill. It's like a cosmic treadmill race in here. And we're going to see him face both Zoom and Reverse Flash in order to save Wally West. It only makes sense that, we got Earbud Thumb, we got Zoom, we got Wally. We might as well bring in Barry as well. And so, yeah, next we're going to be... It's the final part of Rogue War. We are getting to the final chapter of Rogue War and the end of Jeff Johns' run. So let's see how this event concludes. Alright, Chapter 6. Barry Allen has showed up in order to help Wally fight Reverse Flash and Zoom. Barry takes Reverse Flash and knocks him off of the cosmic treadmill, and then he quickly runs back and he grabs Wally. And Wally's just like, Barry, how did you... You're the Flash now, huh? So it looks good on you, though you changed the belt. I followed Thorne's tachyon trail from the treadmill into the future. Looks like he's got a friend. A new Zoom. My problem. And down there, it's me months ago. From my point of view, it's a bad day, Uncle Barry. Don't tell me anymore. We have to get our respective rivals and get the heck out of here. Time is fragile. Meanwhile, Linda gets taken to a nearby hospital because she's coughing up blood, probably because of what's happening to her past self. And Wally and Barry then go straight for... Zoom and Reverse Flash, where Barry's like, I'll deal with Reverse Flash, you deal with Zoom. And so Barry kind of comes in and then leaves pretty much immediately. We don't really get to see him, he doesn't really get to do much. He just grabs Reverse Flash, jumps onto a cosmic treadmill, and takes him back to the day that he snapped his neck. Because it turns out this Barry Allen is the same Barry Allen from moments before he snapped Thorne's neck. So it's been retconned that right before he snapped Thorne's neck, Thorne left, and so Barry chased after him, and then grabbed him and brought him back and then snapped his neck. So we're really adding all these more complicated ways of, changing history. Wally chases after Zoom, while Zoom is trying to go back to the time where, like, so basically what Zoom is going to do is, in the past, Zoom himself is currently, going to try and, like, kill Linda's children because she's pregnant, This Zoom plans on going back to the past where his past self is, and instead of, letting his past self just kill the babies, this Zoom plans on just killing Linda outright. So, Wally and Zoom head back in time to the moment that Linda is being attacked by Zoom, and as he's about to snap his fingers, Wally shoves the future version of Zoom in front of the past version of Zoom, so the sonic boom hits him instead of Linda. And then Wally lets his past self grab his wife and, nurture her. And then Wally just keeps smacking Zoom in the face, punches him up a building. Zoom quickly runs back to the cosmic treadmill. He's like, I don't need Thorn. Hunter, don't. It only works off kinetic energy. You're fueled by time. I'm fueled by tragedy. Now time will reverse it. And he starts powering up the cosmic treadmill, which causes the treadmill to blow up, sending Zoom flying through time as he sees all of his memories, all the awful things that have happened to him. He turns to Wally and he's like, it never should have been like this, Wally. Not for us. I'm sorry. And then he just gets completely blown to smithereens and turned into, like, chronal energy. And Wally's like, Hunter! So Jay and Bart realize that all of the rogues are being pulled into the Mirror World, which means Mirror Master is, like, grabbing them all, taking them away, probably to prepare for a plan in the future. Put them all back in the toy box so that the next writer can come in and do whatever they want. And then Wally gets sent flying out of the time stream, landing in front of Jay and Bart, and that's when Cold appears in front of him as a reflection and is like, I want you to know we never started this war. The Rogues didn't want it. There's no winner here with us. I guess they never really... Cold, for once? Shut up. And he just, crushes the reflection. Then Piper appears and is like, Flash, Piper, there's trouble. Wally quickly runs to the hospital where he finds Linda on life support. He's like, please, I'm a husband. Wally, I'm here. I love you. Never forget. Be strong. Linda? We're losing her. And then Wally's like, no, damn it. God, please, no. Please. And then all of a sudden there's like a... like a massive, like, weird sound just starts playing throughout the entire building. Linda finds herself, like, jolted up in her bed, and then all of a sudden she just becomes pregnant, 9 months pregnant, and she immediately, is ready for delivery. And so she just has her children right here and then, like right here and now. She gives birth to twins. That's right. Wally and Linda have now got a boy and a girl. See, what happened was, because Zoom and Wally went back in time, and Wally sent the future version of Zoom in front of the past version of Zoom, it therefore spared Linda and her children. So she never got hit by the sonic boom, which means the children were never killed. Which meant that... And because of that, because they changed the past, it meant that the present version of Linda just got, like, pregnant in, like, 2 seconds flat, and then had children. I don't know if it really should have worked that way. It would have made more sense if Wally came back in time and found her pregnant already when he got there. But it was a cool moment of her just getting, like, instantly pregnant and then having children. Meanwhile, Ashley Zolomon writes on Owen Mercer's records who his birth mother really is, because we discovered that it is actually Melanie Thorne. And then a phantom version of Zoom appears behind Ashley and is like, I'm sorry, Ashley, because he's probably stuck in the Speed Force or something. So that kind of leaves it open. I think it's Jeff kind of leaving breadcrumbs for a future writer to continue this idea if they want to, continue using Professor Zoom. Cold and Owen, in fact, I'll call him Captain Boomerang from now on. From now on, whenever I say Captain Boomerang, I'm probably referring to Owen Mercer. They bury his father, and Weather Wizard is like, maybe we should take Luthor up on his offer, because Lex Luthor has offered them to join the Secret Society, which is a group of villains. And Cold is like, yeah, with the funding from a billionaire, we might be able to just continue going back to doing regular old crime. And Mirror Master's like, and what about Heatwave and Trickster? They want in. They made mistakes. But they're both still rogues. They're still family, and there's nothing more important than family. Well, except maybe revenge. And when he says that, we're left on, like, the tombstone of the top. Just to be reminded again that Captain Cold brutally killed him, and it was pretty amazing. And so we end with a lovely scene of Wally and Linda back at home. Wally explaining to Linda how she got pregnant, which I've already gone through. And, you know, they hold hands. She's like, I'm just grateful, honey. Me too. And then we get a little bit of a monologue from Wally while Linda and him, you know, make out. Like, Hunter said I'd thank him one day. He said tragedy would make me stronger, but he's wrong. It's people that make me stronger. Friends and family. For me, it always has been. The road of life just took a pretty sharp turn. I don't know what's up ahead, but I can't wait to find out. And so we have a final splash page of Wally running along the ground as all of his friends and families and rogues surround him. You know, we got Hal Jordan, we got Barry Allen, we got Bart, Jay, Superman, Hawkman, Batman, just everyone. None of the JLI or the JLE, you know, characters who Wally spent a lot of time with in the past, because Jeff Johns doesn't really care about them. So why would he include them on a splash page all about Wally's friends? Like, the fact Ralph Dibny isn't here is really weird, because, like, Wally was closer to, like, Hawkman's here, but Ralph Dibny isn't? Like, what? Like, Wally and Hawkman have only ever teamed up once, and it was in that one crossover that Jeff wrote. Like, in fact, that might have even been the first time they actually spoke to one another. But yeah, that's the end of Rogue War and the end of the Jeff Johns run. But it is not the end of this week's episode of Flash Forward, because we've still got some more issues of the Flash to talk about. We're not done. We're going all the way to issue 230, because that's the issue right before Infinite Crisis. So let's keep going. Alright, so now we move on to issue 226, which is written by Stuart Immerman and Catherine Kuder, with art by Steve Lytle. And if you were to ever come up with what the definition of a filler issue of The Flash is, it would definitely be this one, because The Flash himself doesn't really appear in this. It's mainly just a Wally story, kind of a filler story in between Jeff's run and the new writer that will take over for the last few issues leading up to Infinite Crisis. Yeah, these writers are only on this one issue. The reason why this is a filler issue, or at least I consider it a filler issue, is because the story is just about Wally going mountain climbing with Hartley Rathaway, the Pied Piper, and all of the characters that appear in this issue are people that we've never heard of or never seen before. They all have names. I'm just not going to bother talking about them because there's no point, because I doubt that these characters will ever show up again. Like, there's this one, like, the only characters that are worth noting is there's this guy named Dr. Walton, who is the guy that came up with the idea to go on this expedition. And then there's this lady named Meg, who is just the worst possible person you could think of to travel with on Mount Everest. Like, she's the kind of person that, like, if you went traveling with her, like, up a mountain, you'd probably hope that you just leave her there to die, because nobody likes her and she's just a complete pain to be around. And the reason why she's being such a pain is because she wants to get up to the top of the mountain as fast as possible, because apparently there's a secret to possible immortality up there, and that's her whole reason for going up there. It's not something that you learn until at the end of the comic, but it's not like I need to wait to tell you why they're going up this mountain, because they don't talk about it until the very end. Like, this whole time you're just led to believe that they're just going up this mountain because they want to, and then at the very end of the book, Wally is like, you know, risking your mortality isn't worth it just for the chance to gain immortality. And I was kind of reading it being like, wait, since when was immortality a part of this story? And I guess it was just supposed to be like a plot twist reason for Meg and like some of the other characters for being such assholes to Wally. The most interesting part of this issue is how Wally deals with climbing up the mountain. Because he has super speed, while they're climbing up the mountain, he continuously, like, he keeps doing, like, flash stuff off paddle. So, like, he'll leave the mountainside without anyone knowing, go stop a crime as the Flash, and then quickly come back. There's even a point where he went off to find, like, to see Linda for a moment. But because he keeps doing this, he hasn't let himself become acclimated to the mountain, like to the to the height, and so he starts getting sickness. I think it's like air sickness or oxygen sickness or something. It's when you're at high altitudes, altitude sickness. That's what it is. It's when you're at high altitudes, you're not acclimated to, and you get sick. He gets sick to the point of he starts vomiting blood. It's a really gross panel in this where, like, Wally has been coughing the whole way, and Piper's like, "Hey, you okay, man?" And then all of a sudden, Wally just like, he's like, "Yeah," and then he's just like, "Ugh," and starts like vomiting blood. And Piper's like, "All right, we're gonna have to take Wally back home to the hospital, because he's clearly not doing so well, or at least get him to the bottom of the mountain so he can rest." So one of the guys, whose name doesn't matter, says like, "I'll help Wally go down, and you guys continue on." Because they don't want to stop going up the mountain just because Wally's sick, especially Meg. Instead of being worried about Wally, she's just like, "I don't want him like dragging us down, so get him down to the bottom of the mountain, and we'll keep going up the mountain because we don't give a shit about him." And so Wally gets taken down to the bottom of the mountain where he gets to rest in a tent, and then all of a sudden he gets a radio call from Piper saying that they're in trouble and that they need help because there's been like they've gotten separated from each other. So Wally gets into his Flash costume. He heads out at night to go search for Piper, and when he does, Meg, the worst character, causes a massive ruckus, which then causes an avalanche. So an avalanche just comes colliding down the mountain, covering everyone in snow. And so now Wally has the job of not only finding everyone, but also finding them within snow, because two of them have gone missing. Piper is buried somewhere, and so is Dr. Walton. Wally manages to find Piper very quickly, but he doesn't know where Dr. Walton is. And he says, like, "Oh, Dr. Walton could be like 10 meters away or 10,000 meters away. Either way, he's probably dead." And there's actually a moment where Wally goes to like the edge of a cliff and is just like, "What am I supposed to do? Help me!" And he just like screams out. And then he just decides to go looking for Dr. Walton, and he finds him pretty much immediately. He just pulls him out of the snow. He's like, "Dr. Walton, you're okay?" And Dr. Walton's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. I, was buried alive and I almost died, but should be all good." And so Wally takes Dr. Walton to the hospital, and they all reunite, like all of the people that were on the mountain, and Meg and one of the other guys. They're really upset at Wally for ruining the expedition, or they think he ruined the expedition. And Wally's just like, "Hey, I'd rather you be down here alive than be up there risking your life just for stupid immortality. So I'm not going to apologize for saving your lives." And that's where it ends. That's the whole issue. Nice little mountain climb for Wally, which ended in an avalanche and him having to save the day. Oh, and he would eventually go back and climb up the mountain by himself. And now he's used to the altitude, so he's no longer got altitude sickness. So he's like, "Oh, it seems like I've gotten used to it. Heights as the Flash are no longer my weakness, and I need to start, slowing down." Alright, issue 227. We now have a concrete writer and artist for a little while. Joey Cavalieri is the writer, and the artist is Val Semix, and Livesay is the inker. So this is the beginning of a storyline called Finish Line. This is Finish Line Part 1, and this issue, going straight into it, Joey Cavalieri is setting up what seems to be a very weird story, because there's a lot of weird fantasy stuff that goes on in this, like sci-fi, not fantasy, like sci-fi fantasy kind of stuff, and I'm kind of digging it. It's not something that you see in your conventional Flash story, but you'll see what I mean when we get into it. So immediately we start off kind of weird with a what seems to be a look into the future with Warden Wolf of the Iron Heights prison. It's like a older version of him, and he's talking to what is apparently Wally's twin children, but they are a lot older and they have their own costumes, and they've been locked up in Iron Heights prison because apparently they deserve to be, and that Wolf is surprised that their father hasn't come to beat the crap out of him, and so he's like, oh, I wonder where your father is. If he's not here, he must be busy doing something else. And we see that Wally is fighting a bunch of eldritch-looking horrors that were created by Dr. Alchemy. Dr. Alchemy starts turning Wally's body into mist or like steam, and he's like, Dr. Alchemy, please don't. I have children. And then we see Heatwave like kicking in a door to a house, and there's Gorilla Grodd with Linda Park. It turns out that it's Wally and Linda's house. And Weather Wizard is there as well. It seems like Gorilla Grodd has possibly killed Linda. And Weather Wizard like looks at the photos and is like, ugh, these photos suck. And then Bart breaks into the house in order to try and save Linda if she's still alive, and gets immediately zapped and killed by Weather Wizard. And then the three of them escape from the house with Linda in tow. So it's presumed that she's probably still alive. And the house just collides around them. Bart is reduced to nothing but ash, and then Wally wakes up from his nightmare because it turns out it was all just a dream. A really weird dream that Wally is having, but a dream that seemed to be centered around Wally's children, and he believes that that's because, like, he's having these weird dreams because when you have kids, sometimes you just have weird dreams and stuff. Like, this whole lifestyle is new to him. He's getting all sorts of gifts from his superhero friends, like Dick Grayson sends a savings bond for his kids' college education, and Bruce Wayne says that Wayne Enterprises is going to pay for all of their education so they never have to pay for anything in their life. And Wally's like, oh, I guess Bruce doesn't think that a mechanic can pay for his own children's education. Ugh, billionaires. And then he gets like a letter from Diana, and something I don't like about this is that Wally seems to be incredibly rude towards his friend's goodwill, because like while he's reading this letter from Diana, he's just like I could understand him reading a letter from Bruce and kind of being like, oh, blah blah blah, like Bruce is, donating for their education, but he does the same with Diana's letter, and I'm like, that's a bit harsh. All Diana did was send some Themysciran like bracelets and a sword, and Wally also already shows that he's kind of weirdly playing favorites with his children already, because his wife has to remind him that he has a daughter, because he gets like the bracelets from Themyscira, and he's like, there's no way my son is wearing bracelets, which, first of all, what's the problem with that? What is the problem with your son wearing cool battle bracelets? I feel like if anyone had a son and you were like, hey, do you want these really awesome bracelets that were sent by Wonder Woman that you could use to deflect bullets? I feel like any boy would be like, yes. Like, hell yeah. But Wally's like, nah, bracelets are for girls. And that the sword is for the boy. And Linda is like, well, he's not going to have that sword until he's a lot older. Linda's parents have come to have dinner with them, and they take the opportunity to do what I hate about this. Look, when it comes to religion, I don't really care if you're religious or not. Like, you do you. But what I hate more than anything is when religious people try to push their views on others, or try to decide their like children's beliefs and stuff right away by pushing the children into that same religion. I'm of the mind of allowing my children to choose what they want to believe in and not push them into anything. Linda's parents are not like that. Linda's parents immediately are like, maybe you should consider like letting your kids come with us to church. and so that we can push them into Christianity right away, because they should believe in the same thing that we do. Like, they're very pushy about it, and I guess that's just the kind of parents that they are. Wally and Linda are kind of hesitant about it, but they eventually go through with it, and so Linda and her parents and Wally all go to the church together. There's a really, really sweet moment where Linda's dad feeds Wally's daughter, whose name doesn't exist yet. They haven't give his... I just realized, his children don't have names. They will eventually get names, but I won't mention them yet, because technically they don't have these names yet. But yeah, the daughter... Unfortunately, I'm going to have to call her that. The daughter is hungry, and so Linda's dad decides to feed her some, like, squeezed apricots, and is like, remember this day, because this will be the last time that you get to eat, like, this kind of food, and it's going to be, like, one of the happier memories. I thought it was a very sweet moment. And then the not-so-sweet part of the comic happens, which is when they go to the church, and, like, I have no problem with churches, but this seems to be the worst kind of church that you could go to, especially to bring your children to, because they're all conspiracy nuts in this. Like, the first person Wally talks to is, like, literally talking about the end of days. He's like, I can see why people are nervous. The signs of the last days are all around us. You can't avoid them. War, suffering, civilization struggling against each other. And he's, like, got a 6-year-old daughter, or probably even younger than that, standing right next to him. And it's like, why are you talking about the end of days? Why are you talking about the end of the world and, like, suffering and war and stuff right in front of your child right there? Like, maybe wait until they're a little bit older, or don't make that the first thing that you say to someone when you meet them. Like, that's just weirdo behavior, to be like, hi, my name's David. Have you ever thought about the end of the world and how, like, we're at the last days and that there's all this suffering and shit, like, going on? Like, how are you doing? Like, no. That's the worst way to introduce yourself to somebody. Wally doesn't want to talk to this guy anymore, so he notices that a paint scaffold starts, like, falling down. Like, there's a big scaffolding that, like, all these painters are on. They're painting the church. It starts falling, so Wally is like, alright, I gotta go save them. As he puts on his Flash costume, he zooms by Linda and gives her a note to tell them to, tell the guests, like, tell everyone at the church his regular excuse. And then he gets to saving these people. There's a funny moment where Wally is like, this is where my theme song would kick in if I had a theme song. And not the Flash Gordon movie thing either. Which, I had a little bit of a chuckle to. Just imagining Wally thinking about what kind of theme tune he would have. So he runs toward the scaffolding. He manages to catch everyone because he is the fastest man alive. And then he runs up the wall, grabs a hammer, and as it's falling, as well as another guy, brings him to the ground safely, and then catches all the scaffolding pieces and, puts them all on the ground gently. They're currently moving a big glass panel into the front of the church, and it snaps off and starts to fall, and Wally goes to save this kid who's about to get hit by it, but the kid catches it, and it seems like he's got, like, super strength or something, because he just catches it with ease and then puts it down, and then he disappears, and Wally is like, oh, that's weird. Why did that kid catch that, and then why did he run away? Like, wouldn't you want people to know that you have this kind of super strength? Which, I don't get why Wally thinks that, because it's always been known that if you have superpowers, it's very hard to just tell people, because they'll have all sorts of questions and it can really make your life complicated. I mean, just look at Wally's life. Like, how could he go through all of these things in his life because of his powers, and then look at a kid and be like, why isn't he revealing his powers to everyone? It's not like it's going to cause any problems or anything. It's not like I've had many friends who have almost died because I've revealed my powers to people. So he follows this kid, and he sees, like, a light coming from what looks like some sort of basement in the church. So he decides to, like, and he can't get in through the window because there's, like, iron bars in the way. So he decides that he has to go in through the front of the church. He heads down into the basement through one of the back entrances and finds this weird basement that is fully lit. It all looks like high tech and stuff. And there's, like, 30 kids in there. But they don't look like regular kids from his time. They look like kids from the future or something. We actually find out that these kids are from another dimension, which is called It's called like, what's it called? Point parallax, which has nothing to do with that parallax, the one that you're probably thinking about. Like it has nothing to do with Hal Jordan parallax. It's just this other dimension, and in this dimension, it's the kind of dimension that people like Wally would wish to live in and raise their children. Because everyone in this other dimension is a superhero, and they all have children and stuff. So, like, if you're a superhero, you can live in this place and not worry about being judged or anything, not worry about your kids getting in any kind of danger. The problem is that there's this girl called Fantasia, who is the only named kid here. They all have superpowers. Her sister is currently really sick and might die. She has like this weird aging disease. And the reason why they can't cure her is because everyone in this other dimension is superpowered. So they don't really need it. They never really needed to learn how to use like medical stuff or anything because they couldn't really get hurt. So now that one of them's sick, they don't really know what to do, and now they need outside help. So they want Wally to help them find something that should be able to cure her. And they tell him that there should be something in the Flash Museum called the Summoner. So Wally says, like, sure, I'll go to the Flash Museum and find this device for you and then try and help you, cure this girl. And as he leaves, he's like, I'll be back. And then a voice off panel is like, well done, disciples. And all the kids start laughing maniacally. And the mysterious voice is like, you'll be rewarded for this. Not only in this world, but in the world to come. To be continued. So we'll find out who this mysterious voice is and what this summoner device is within the next issue. Alright, issue 228. And there's some really weird stuff going on within this story. I've already talked about how we've been getting weird flash forwards to alternate futures that involve Wally's children, but Wally is just having like delusive flashes into the future of possible outcomes, all sorts of weird situations going on with him, kind of like an Alice in Wonderland situation. Because at the beginning of this issue, he goes to the Flash Museum in order to find the summoner, and then Mirror Master just appears out of nowhere, pulling him into one of the nearby display cases. And then he just starts, like, belting all of this, like, essentially useless information, taunting Wally, saying that there's, like, terrible things that are gonna happen, and that he is the strongest rogue because he has control over all reflections, and that there's reflections in everything, and that Wally's children are probably gonna grow up in a world in like where they don't have superpowers like their dads, so they're just going to be regular children, and they're just going to have to live in this awful world that has been created by humanity, blah blah blah. Turns out Wally is just seemingly hallucinating all this because Dexter comes up to him and is like, Wally, like, Flash, you all good? And Wally's just like, yeah, I'm fine, I just came here to pick up the summoner, I just had zoned out for a bit. Do you know where the summoner is? And Dexter takes Wally to the room where the summoner should be, and there's all this alien technology, and when they get there, the summoner is missing. Meanwhile, Jay and Bart are looking for Wally because he hasn't come back for a while. He left the church, and they haven't seen him in hours, so they're like, oh, where'd he go? Like, Linda's getting a little bit worried, so they're going to look for him, and that's the last we see of Bart and Jay for a while. Then we get another one of those weird flash forwards where we see who is presumably a future version of Wally's son, asking for his sister and talking about how, like, the Thorns are their enemies and that they are they're like traveling through time trying to kill all of the Allens, which is just the plot of Chain Lightning. It turns out Wally's just having another hallucination, and he's actually talking to Dick Grayson, Nightwing, about these hallucinations because he's invited Dick to the Flash Museum with him to try and investigate what happened to the Summoner. This is where Joey Cavaleri's writing is at its weakest, because he has characters talk so much, but they're not talking about anything important. They are literally just rambling on for no reason. Like, Nightwing spends, like, 3 pages or 2 pages rambling to Wally about how the summoner wasn't stolen and that it was taken by somebody close to Wally. And he spends 2 pages just being really cryptic with Wally until he's like, I know who took it. It was Cyborg. And so they go to find Cyborg because he took the summoner, because apparently somebody tried to steal it and use it. And so Cyborg took it. And instead of just telling Wally that, Dick just decided to do the worst way of revealing that it was Cyborg, just being like, well, nobody actually stole it, somebody actually like took it, and it wasn't like a friend, and like, or it was like a friend or something. And Wally was like, oh well, it couldn't have been Dexter, was it a speedster? And Dick was like, no, it's not a speedster, it's actually Cyborg, like, here you go. Like, it was just an unnecessary amount of rambling just to get to the core of, you know, what's going on. It almost felt like Joey Cavalieri was just kind of like trying to fill up page space, especially because Cyborg and Wally just have a conversation that doesn't go anywhere, and it's literally just Cyborg saying over and over again that somebody tried to steal the summoner and use it, and then Wally's like, all right, I'm gonna take it and take it back to these kids that want it, and we'll be able to see what it does. So Wally takes the summoner back to the church, where he finds the kids. He has another weird hallucination, because the first time he comes and gives it to the kids, they, like, start mocking him, and then Wally starts, like, randomly aging, and turns out that didn't actually happen. He was just hallucinating it. What actually happened when he got back to the kids, and he gave it to them, was that they healed this Fantasia character, who was dying, and then it's revealed that she wasn't actually dying, and that the whole thing was just a hallucination created by her, because they all work for Vandal Savage. That's right, it's revealed that Vandal Savage has convinced all these kids to join him. The reason why they all have superpowers is because Vandal gives him their blood. Like, that's their reward. Like, gives them his blood, sorry. And by giving them his blood, they get powers from it. The reason why Vandal is doing all of this and why he wants the summoner is because he's trying to create what he calls a holy war. Because Vandal Savage has become all biblical and holy now, because he lives forever, but humanity is ruining the world. And so he wants to thin out humanity by creating a holy war, and that way, you know, he'll be living on a planet that's more well looked after. Basically, he's just doing it for himself. Because he's like, well, if I have to live forever, I want to live on a planet that isn't overpopulated, where, like, all of the resources are being used up by humanity. I'd rather live on a planet where there's way less of us, because it's better for me. And, yeah. So he just tells Wally that that's his plan, and that Wally's never going to be able to stop him, especially because Vandal has Jay Garrick and Bart Allen held hostage, and he reveals that they are, like, hooked up to these weird machines in another room, and that's where the issue ends. It ends with Vandal Savage revealing his plan to create a holy war that will kill, like, half the planet, probably, like, population, and that Jay and Bart are under his being held captive by him. So we'll find out what happens in the next issue. Alright, so issue 229 begins in a very depressing manner with Wally carrying a wreath to the gravestones of his dead children. And it's just another, like, flash forward hallucination that he's having. Wally is actually being held captive alongside Jay and Bart by Vandal Savage. Vandal Savage is planning to start a new holy war. He's been using his influence to control, like, these kids by giving him his blood to give them powers. He's also been using his influence to control people like Linda's parents, who kind of worship Vandal, because he's been moonlighting as, like, a priest of this church. And so, you know, he's interrogating Jay, Bart, and Wally, kind of mocking them, and how he's going to activate the summoner, and his goal is to use the summoner to bring an asteroid to Earth, and then when it crashes into Earth, it should wipe out like half the planet, and create a new planet for Vandal to rule over. That's his plan. One thing I really like about this issue is that Vandal and Jay have some really fun interactions with each other because they've faced each other a lot. Vandal Savage debuted in a Jay Garrick comic book, and so he's the closest thing that Jay has to an arch nemesis. Like, they've tried to give Jay other arch enemies, like the Rival, but Vandal Savage will always be his arch nemesis to me, and I wish that people did more with Vandal and Jay's relationship. In fact, I wish that people would do more with Vandal Savage and the Flash family in general, because he's one of the few villains who has faced every single generation of the Flash at some point. He faced Wally, he faced Jay, he faced Barry. So he's a very unique Flash villain in that aspect, and that it's why I always consider him more of a Flash villain than a Justice League villain, because his most interesting interactions have come with the different Flashes. But yeah, there's a really cool interaction between him and Jay, where Jay is just mocking him, being like, hey, can you come closer, Vandal, so I can spit on you? And Vandal's like, oh, I'd love that, because then I could use your spit to create clones of you. And you know what? I just want to be able to create a clone of you so I can just kill it over and over again, repeatedly, because I hate you that much. And Jay's just like, well, spitting on you isn't worth anything anyway, because it'd be like spitting on a dead tree. It's just like these really fun interactions of them just ribbing each other. And so Vandal leaves his men to watch over the three Flashes as he goes outside and activates the summoner with all the children and brings an asteroid to Earth. And they basically just wait for the asteroid to collide with Earth. Meanwhile, Jay and Wally and Bart manage to escape by tricking Vandal's cronies into thinking that they've already escaped out of their manacles. Is that what you would call it? Like their these devices that are keeping them held captive. Because what they do is they vibrate so fast that they turn invisible. But the cronies think that they've vibrated out of the devices. So they unlock the devices. And that then sets Jay and Wally and Bart free because they actually just turned invisible. So they get set free, they beat up Vandal's cronies, and then Wally is like, alright, I'll go deal with Vandal. Bart, you get as many people as safety as possible just in case the asteroid does collide with Earth. And Jay, you go make sure that my family is okay. And so Bart goes off and he starts saving people left, right, and center all over the city. Jay goes to Linda's apartment where he sees that Linda, her parents, and the kids are missing, and they've left a couple of building blocks behind that spell J, and they tell him exactly where to go. So he heads off to find Linda. Linda had to lie to her parents and pretend that she was sick in order to get her parents away from Vandal and to safety. They still are under Vandal's influence, and they want to go and pray to Vandal. And Linda's like, I wish you didn't pray to the guy that's trying to kill us right now. And Jay arrives and is like, maybe Vandal's influence will eventually stop the further they get away from Vandal. So maybe if we move them a little bit further away, they'll stop praying to him. Wally faces Vandal head on, but just gets zapped by one of the kids' superpowers, which knocks Wally out. And Vandal's just like, how do you expect to survive the end of the world? And that's where the issue ends. It ends with Wally just getting knocked out by Vandal's superpower children. And we're left on that little bit of a cliffhanger. So we'll have to find out in the next issue, the final issue of The Flash for a while, because the series goes on a hiatus. We're going to find out what happens to Wally and whether or not he manages to defeat Vandal and save the world. So yeah, we'll find out. And so we make it to the final issue of The Flash, issue 230. Yes, you didn't hear me wrong. This is the final issue. The end. It begins with Wally West saving a woman in what looks like an apocalyptic future where there's these weird parasitic creatures attacking everyone. They can survive literally anything, and so Wally's going around trying to save people from these weird. They kind of look like starros, but not in a star shape. They look like little amoebas. It's really weird. Anyway, Wally is actually, he's not actually in an apocalyptic future. It's just another hallucination. Really, he's been knocked out by all of these superpower children that are being controlled by Vandal Savage. He manages to push himself to stand up and face against these kids, but he's trying not to hurt them because they are just children. So he's like judging all of their attacks, grabbing them, kind of like throwing them around without hurting them. There's this one kid who has the ability to create a weird alien-like water kind of like, it's like a liquid. Kind of looks like phlegm. It's really weird. He encases Wally in it, in this big bubble of weird alien liquid, and starts like suffocating him. But then a bunch of bullets get fired at the liquid that's coating Wally, breaking through it and freeing him. It turns out that it's Chaya and Murillo have shown up. It's been a while since we've seen them, but they're here now, and this is the only time we see them in the whole book. They're in 2 panels. They save Wally and allow Wally to go and quickly talk to Dexter. Dexter gives Wally the blueprints for the summoner so that Wally can hopefully destroy it, but Wally doesn't decide to destroy the summoner. Instead, because he thinks back to Barry sacrificing himself when he destroyed the Anti-Monitor's machine. Wally almost did the same thing. Like, he almost was like, oh, I'll run around the summoner, destroy it, probably destroy myself in the process. But then instead he decides to just keep tinkering with the summoner over and over again. And instead of destroying it, he decides to reverse the polarity of the beam. So instead of pulling the asteroid towards Earth, it starts pushing it away. And Vandal Savage does one of the funniest things that a villain has ever done. He jumps into the beam and allows it to push him out of space, like into space. So Wally's just like, wait, Vandal, don't! Like, if you go into space, you'll die. And Vandal's like, that doesn't matter to me. Like, I'm ready to go out into space and create my own museum that dwarves yours in size. Because once I get out into space where the asteroid is, it'll give me so much power that I will become the Lord of Space. Like, that's essentially what he's thinking. He's like, oh, if I go into space and I and I go towards that asteroid, I'll become God itself. And so he just allows the beam to carry him out into space. And then there's a shot of the asteroid, and from a distance you just hear like a boom, and it's obviously like Vandal Savage colliding with the asteroid after he gets pushed down into space. And Vandal is presumably dead. Like, he is just that's Vandal being killed off. Pushed out into space, collides with the asteroid, presumably dies. And so Wally just starts thinking to himself, he's like, I don't know that away from his influence, his flock will return to normal. Their devotion to him will die. Those whom he gave special powers will lose them after no longer receiving his ministrations. But whether or not Savage will be back, stronger than ever, to make good his veiled threat on my children, that I don't know. I hope I never know. And then Wally heads back home where he sees Jay and Bart arguing about how Jay handled the situation when they were shackled up. Like, Bart's kind of like, oh, you were a little bit too snarky back there, and Jay's just like, I don't give a shit, Bart, it's weird for you to be the one lecturing me, I'm the older one, I lecture you. And then Wally basically just stops being the Flash at this point. Not entirely, he doesn't retire, he just slows down. He's like, after everything that Vandal said about getting rid of my children, like killing my children and stuff, I realized that I need to slow down and spend more time with them, so I'm not going to be the Flash as often anymore. And so that's why this series just kind of comes to an end. It kind of ends with Wally just being like, I'm still the Flash, but not much anymore. Probably like once a week instead of every day. Just spending time with my family. And that's it. that's the end of The Flash. It ends right there. The final issue of The Flash. And we'll have to find out what happens to Wally West and his family in Infinite Crisis. But that's going to be it for the end of this week's episode. Next week, we're starting Countdown to Infinite Crisis. Because before we get into Infinite Crisis, we got to find out how we even get there. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm going to have to cover leading up to it. You know, we got Countdown to Infinite Crisis. We got a story called Sacrifice that stars Superman. We got the OMAC Project. We got the Ranthanagar War. We got the Spirit of Vengeance. Like, we got all sorts of stuff that we're going to have to talk about and discuss before we get to Infinite Crisis. But it's going to be real exciting. We're getting to one of the biggest events in DC history. We're going to be able to see what happens to Wally, what happens to the Flash, because there's a new Flash series that's going to be starting soon, but it's not exactly the kind you'll be expecting. So I'm really excited to get to that. But yeah, that's the end of the Jeff Johns run. That's the end of the Flash series for now. And overall, when it comes to the Jeff Johns run, I have very mixed opinions on it. I really enjoyed the beginning of the series. Like, starting off with those first couple of arcs, I enjoyed those a lot. The moment where my opinions really started to shift on the Jeff Johns run and started to become a lot more complicated was when it began with Linda losing her job as a reporter. That was the first time that something happened in the run that I didn't like. And then I felt like after that, it was like more and more things were happening that I wasn't enjoying. And then, you know, we had Blitz, which was incredible. Blitz was great. I really loved that. And then it took a hard drop with Ignition, which may be the worst Flash arc I've ever read. I did not like Ignition at all. I didn't like Secret of Barry Allen. So it was weird that, like, Jeff followed on from best arc with two pretty awful ones. And then Rogue War was fine. Like, I'd say Rogue War was very mediocre. You could tell it was rushed. I don't think Jeff was planning to end his run at Rogue War. And the reason why I don't think that is because he'd set up more stuff. There were more plot lines that were unresolved at the end of his run. Specifically Murillo. Murillo being the biggest, like, plot line that was never resolved. If you remember, you know, Murillo got slashed by Cicada at one point, and he gained immortality. And it was hinted many times throughout Jeff Johns' run that he was under the influence of Cicada, and that Jeff was setting up this whole plotline with Cicada where Murillo was going to be under his control and stuff. Like another Cicada plot was going to happen. And it never went anywhere. And I don't think it is going to go anywhere. And so it's kind of frustrating that, like, that plotline was never resolved. And then you also have Weather Wizard's son being adopted by Iris. You know, that would eventually get resolved, but as of now, it is a plot thread that has kind of just been left hanging. It's almost like, you know, Jeff was probably going to do something with that, but he got taken off of the series because they were trying to wrap it up and they wanted somebody else to do it. Because, I don't know, they didn't want Jeff wrapping up the Flash series. Maybe he didn't want to. I don't know. Yeah, it felt very rushed towards the end. With Joey Cavalieri coming in, you could tell it was rushed. You could tell that this whole Vandal Savage plot, it was like, you know, he had like 5 issues to wrap up the entire series. That's not easy to do. He pulled it off, but it still felt rushed. Where Wally slowing down didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense for him to just decide to not be the Flash as much. The flash forwards were incredibly confusing. I did not enjoy those. Those were the worst parts of these final issues, was these weird flash forwards to the future of seeing these different versions of Wally's children and this apocalyptic future that probably never happens. It was just confusing. It was a headache. Like, that one issue where Mirror Master just appeared out of nowhere and started lecturing Wally for no reason was just bizarre. It's like, is that leading anywhere or not? Like, I guess I'm gonna have to find out when I read, like, Infinite Crisis, because that's probably what they're referring to. But I doubt it actually has anything to do with Mirror Master or Vandal Savage. I don't know. It just felt like a lot of plot meandering, a lot of random things being thrown in to just make it extra confusing. I don't know. If it pays off, I'll be surprised, but I doubt it. I doubt that any of those visions are going to pay off in the future. And so, yeah, I think I rank the Jeff Johns run lower than the Wade run, Mesner Lobes, and Grant Morrison and Mark Millar. Like, I like all of those runs better. I think they're better than the Johns run. Way better than the Johns run. Like half of the Johns run is good, the other half is not good. Like the whole secret identity retcon is really bad. Jeff couldn't even stick with some of the decisions that he made. Like he made Linda quit her job and then couldn't even stick to it. You know, he had her going to college to become a nurse, did nothing with that. She just ends up quitting off panel, becomes a reporter again. Like, just stuff like that is just, like, kind of annoying to read, where it's like, what was the point? Why did you even have her quit her job in the first place if you can't even commit to this new status quo that you've created for her, and you're just going to go back on it again anyway? It's just frustrating. I would have much preferred it if a different writer had done that. It makes it more frustrating that it was Jeff going back on his own writing and just changing things to how they were before anyway. It's just kind of annoying. But yeah, that's all of my thoughts on the Jeff Johns run. Didn't enjoy it as much as other stuff. I thought it was way overhyped. You know, a lot of people, it's their favorite Flash run, and I can understand that, but I don't really get it. I don't think it is the best at all. Like, I think it has a lot of flaws to it. You know, Wade's run had some flaws, but I think every single arc, like, even Wade's worst arc was better than John's, like, worst arc. You know, and a lot of Wade's arcs, I think, were better than John's best arcs, too. Like, Return of Barry Allen was better than Blitz, but Blitz is still really good. Yeah, so that's it. That's the end of the Flash for a while. It's going to be a while before we read any more Flash. A long while. Got a lot of stuff to cover. So yeah, I hope to see you next week when I begin Countdown to Infinite Crisis. We're going to be talking about Infinite Crisis for a long time. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of issues. There's like 80 tie-ins to Infinite Crisis, and I plan on talking about most of them. So yeah, hope to see you then, and I hope you enjoyed this episode.